traffic, when you've had that extra hour of sleep, and then you finish later as well, instead of going to work early. And it is school holidays as well, so there's less cars on the road, there's less hustle and bustle. And of course, we have to thank the council for these lights on Evington Road. Just putting the lights up has calmed this road down a little. Can you see how the mood of people changes if they see a few lights on the road? It's wonderful indeed. So let's keep it up, and the road is cleaner. Keep the litter of our streets in our deen. We do wudu 5 times a day. Sanitation is key. So brothers, if you are out there listening and you agree with me, put your right hand up and connect with me on social media, on telephone call if you feel brave enough, strong enough to call me on 0116 212 9324. If you need your battery charging, then Zed's the man. Call me and I'm going to charge your battery up and put you into action. So give me a call. Or if you're one of those very shy people that don't want to speak on the phone, then you can send a text to me on 07 450 925 084. So brothers and sisters, what's going on this weekend? The weekend is going to be upon us very, very quickly, but let me go through some of our programs with you as to what's happening here today and the rest of the day. We have at 11 a.m. Morning Matters with Sharmeen. Sharmeen, what is your program going to be about? Because if I tell people out there Morning Matters, they're going to ask me a question, well, what matters in the morning? So Sharmeen, you need to share that with me so I can forward that to all of these beautiful people in Leicester. And then another one after that at 12 is Ramadan Spiritual Infusion with Ustad Sharif. So listen in. And then of course at 1 o'clock is Zohar time, so you'll be listening to some nasheeds. And then 2 o'clock we have Salma and Seema. They'll be talking about some relevant matters in the community. And then 3 o'clock, I hope you're all writing this down, so don't be asking me again and again and again. What's on at 3 o'clock is Mufti Yasin, and we have the Children's Hour with Fatima and Salma. And then we have Our Voice with Amreen. Thereafter, we have a wonderful program today called Education Matters at 6 p.m. today. Education Matters is an important program for you all to listen to. The reason is because it will be covering topics of education and the whole process. One of the main issues right now is how do you pay the fees for your child at university. So this topic will be discussed in great detail. So brothers and sisters, let's pay attention to that and thrash out some ideas. How do we do that? So if we have to collect 10,000 or even 11 or 12,000, it might be going up. How do we do that? Because it's quite a lot of money. If you have 3 children, how do you fund £36,000 or £30,000 per annum when your earning is only 30,000? So this is very important, because of course you can get a grant, and if you take this grant and you then have to go and pay the repayment on it, you're straight away in debt, aren't you? So you leave your education and you're paying a debt back. So this is a big problem, and we need to address this. So the brother Khalil Qasim, one of the aspiring gentlemen in the community, he will address this issue and he will have discussions with you about this to see what we're going to do about this. Definitely we'll do that. Now, still we are getting messages every day about different programs that we should be airing on the Ramadan special EAVA 102.5 FM. And one of the programs which is very important is SEN. What facilities, what can we do more in that area? SEN, special needs and disability. These are issues that cannot be left unattended in the community. We need to be aware of them. A lot of what we do here is all about awareness. Awareness is very, very important. So we have a guest today joining us in the studio, and we have in the morning show we have this policy of walk-in guests. You walk through the door, and your pound is worth more. Do you remember that, Edward?
I don't know.
As you walk through the door, your pound is worth more. So, of course, anybody who walks in through this door to be with Zed on the breakfast show is going to leave this door totally blessed and Zedified. So, I'm going to let my guest introduce himself. He's come pretty much on time, for the morning breakfast show on Thursday. So, go on, take it away.
Lovely. All right. Good morning, and thanks for having me. My name is Sean Arbuthnot, and I am the Prevent Coordinator for Leicester, Leicestershire and Rutland. So my work revolves around trying to protect vulnerable individuals from radicalisation and extremism.
Of course, this is a very, very interesting topic, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah.
Previously, we had your colleague who was taking care of this particular area, and we had a lot of discussions with him, with Bill Knopp.
Yes.
And with Will Boldet.
Yes.
You'll recall that?
Two good guys, yeah.
Yeah. So this is why this topic is very relevant is like we have a lot of feedback prior to this show that people are sending us messages, which today I'm going to discuss with you. So all of you guys, if some of you have not sent your messages in to discuss issues about Prevent or to bring awareness about Prevent here in Leicester, then do share with me and contact me here. You can call me on 0116 212 9324. Sean, what's your surname?
Arbuthnot.
Right, Sean, you're going to have to spell that for me.
I am,
because
yes.
that is a very difficult one.
It's actually Scottish originally. It's Arbuthnot. Arbuthnot.
Right. My producer is making a note of that because he's going to put that on the screen for everyone, because we need to get awareness to everybody's surnames as well. That's important as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We must prevent people saying the surnames wrongfully.
I get it all the time. I get it with my surname and my first name. I get them spelt wrong all the time. So.
Well, you see, like in the ethnic community, your name will be spelled Sean, which is seen.
Yep.
Not Sean. Yes?
Or Shan in Irish.
Sean in Irish, yeah. So it could be seen, could be Sean,
yes.
Could be Sean.
Yes.
Yeah? Now you see, you got three versions.
I know.
Of just a name.
And don't even get me started on spelling it with a U or a W, SH, AUN, things like that.
See,
with respect to people who do spell it that way.
So
but no, it's not for me.
Sean, here I've just depicted an example to you that to everything in life there's three versions.
Indeed, yes.
And nothing we can do about it.
Yeah.
You can tell people till the cows come home that walk straight and they'll still deviate left or right. So a lot of the work that you do is trying to tell people to walk straight, yeah?
Yep.
So these issues of when I was growing up here in this city in the 70s, right? You didn't have the words radicalism and extremism, right? Everything with ISM added on it is an issue.
Sure.
Yeah? Now, what today I want to touch upon various points with you on the Prevent activities. I'd like you to go through them from the inception of Prevent, where the idea came from for Prevent in the early days to where we are today.
Sure. Well, Prevent, gosh, it's been on the go now for, it must be around 15 years or so. It was first conceptualized round about the time of the 7/7 attacks in 2005. And at that particular time, it was developed in partnership with communities, but it was very much focused on this perceived notion of Al-Qaeda-inspired terrorism. So it's fair to say, if we're being brutally honest, that in its early days, Prevent was probably overly focused on Muslim communities because of the emphasis that was placed on Al-Qaeda-inspired terrorism, which was the main threat to UK security at that particular time. But Prevent doesn't stay still. It evolves and develops over time. It tries to meet whatever the emerging threats and risks are. And obviously in recent years, it'll be no surprise to know that although it has never really gone away, to be fair, but far-right extremism has always been an issue, I think, in the UK. And we've certainly seen a rise in far-right related referrals to Prevent in recent years. So as far back as 2011, Prevent formally recognised the fact that it dealt with all forms of extremism, including right-wing extremism. I've worked in Prevent since 2013. I started working in Prevent in Northampton, and at that particular time, about 40% of my caseload related to the right wing. So as the years have progressed, Prevent has gone through different iterations. It's dealt with more and more threats, and it's tried to deal with them in a variety of more sort of innovative ways. So not only now do we find ourselves in a position where we're not just supporting vulnerable individuals, people who are exposed to extremism, people we might believe to be at risk of radicalisation. We work with them on a one-to-one basis, but we also put in place a whole host of community initiatives, workshops, outreach programs. We work with local organisations, national organisations to try and raise awareness around extremism and build resilience to it, at a grassroots level. And that's essentially where we are with Prevent now.
So during the week, we have been having discussions with some of our listeners. We had announced to them that we are doing a program with Prevent, and they also want to prevent many issues happening.
Sure.
So nobody has ever understood this issue of Prevent, that it's very vague. The origins of it, when a lot of people are doing research on it, they're telling us information such as it was based on prisoners way back when they thought about this whole issue of Prevent. And one listener, he even told us, well, the name Prevent is not actually prevent, it's create, it should be called, because it creates more problems than it prevents the problems within the community.
Yeah.
Because it is, the whole program is all based around stigmatizing a section of the community, be it the Muslim community mainly. And these are the kind of feedbacks that we have been receiving.
Yeah, and I understand those. I get that people have those concerns. I don't personally agree with them. But in terms of when Prevent first came into being, I do think that one criticism that you could level at it was that in its early days, it wasn't as open and transparent as it might have been. And I think that's partly why the early days of Prevent are kind of shrouded in mystery a wee bit.
When you say early days and you planted the seeds of destruction, it's then more difficult for even you to take over from your predecessor to try to repair what was already seeds of destruction.
Yeah, I mean, I think seeds of destruction is probably a wee bit strong for my liking, but I think you're right. I think there were trust issues that we've had to work hard.
Somebody's actually said that I'm right. My producer, he's not shaking his head because he never agrees with me. So here we are going to go through these messages shortly.
Sure.
And we will go through them all in one particular section of the show.
Okay,
Sean,
yeah, that's brilliant.
I don't want to overwhelm you with so many messages here. We have too many discussions on this pre-program.
Okay, yeah.
Because when we advertise the program, then people, they talk to us about it.
It's a controversial issue. It gets a lot of people talking.
It is actually a very emotional issue.
Yeah.
Controversy also brings in your emotional intelligence kicks in. And then you weigh that up with your spiritual intelligence, right? So the bottom line is a human life, be it in Leicester, in England, and Yemen, is just as important.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes.
And the feedbacks that people give to you, which I will relay to you, is that if you're trying to prevent an issue here in Leicester, for example, yes, yet the powers, we've had another gentleman coming into the studio here, all of you listening in on Ramadan special EAVA 102.5 FM. You have a situation here where we are clearly outnumbered here in the studio, 2 against 1. You're listening to ZED on the Breakfast Show, and Sean's colleague. Now, don't be saying Sean, S-E-A-N, it's Sean.
Sean.
Yeah?
Yep.
We're going to say it all together, Sean. And one of his colleagues has joined in.
Mark.
He's going to introduce himself. Mark, it is so easy to say your name. So Sean is taking pictures right now. I hope that is not going to prevent an issue here with taking pictures of
Security
me,
risk.
Mark, and Sean. We're all here together on the program, and we're going to be discussing some very interesting issues today. Mark, thank you for joining us. You're right on time, actually.
Good.
You're not so late because we're just doing a little bit of introduction, and we spent, just to fill you in, we spent about 4 minutes and 48 seconds discussing Sean's name and the origin of the name and the pronunciation of the name. So you haven't missed a great deal. We were talking about Prevent, the start of Prevent, what it was based upon, and where is the data. We are coming to that now. Sean, now, where is the data? Who is holding Prevent accountable as to its success rate? Where is that data? Do you know much you can tell me about that?
Yeah, roughly twice a year the Home Office publishes Prevent and channel data. That's only something they've started doing in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, to be honest. But you can also find online data going back even further than that. But essentially, a couple of times a year, they post details of the number of Prevent referrals, the number that made it to channel, the breakdown in terms of gender and the type of extremism and where the referrals came from. So in terms of openness, actually, the Home Office are very good these days at actually getting that information out there. It's all available on the gov.uk website. So basically, if you just Google Prevent statistics, it should be the first thing that comes up.
Right, guys. I know 2 or 3 of you were asking me this question, so let's try to Google that website, and we'll find stats on that, right? So we need to address that in detail. Maybe our producer can do that later on in the show, and we can address that issue. So the data, the stats on it, and the success of it, who's validating it, and so on. It's on the website, yeah?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. So I've also read in the press that many of these cases don't even lead to prosecution. They are more to do with persecution rather than prosecution. What is your view on that, Sean? Obviously, here you are going to be defending your corner. I'm here.
Yeah, I wouldn't say defending my corner, but
listening to Mark and Sean today.
Yeah,
and learning.
I'd say they're to do with neither, to be honest. Neither prosecution nor persecution, because Prevent's aim is not to criminalise people. Prevent's aim is not to go out arresting people. We deal with people who are vulnerable to radicalisation before they've reached the stage where they're committing violent acts, essentially. So if we can keep people on the straight and narrow and keep them away from violence, that's a success. Now, in terms of persecution, it's not about targeting people. It's not about putting them through anything they don't want to do, because the other thing about Prevent is it relies on consent. So people have to be willing to work with us and accept intervention and support. And so if someone gets referred to us, say it could be anybody, a social worker or a professional, a school teacher, makes a referral because they've got a concern about somebody. Well, first of all, it's worth knowing that person is not going to be arrested. They're not going to go through anything that's going to show up on a criminal record check, a DBS check, or any of those sorts of things. And what they will be offered is help, support, and guidance, and it's up to them whether or not they accept it. So it's neither prosecution nor persecution. When someone goes into the Prevent process, particularly through Channel, which is the safeguarding process for the most vulnerable referrals, I guess, what they're subjected to is wraparound care and support from different agencies. They could have help with education, mental health assessment. They could have anger management, careers advice. We do a lot of work with local organisations to offer them constructive activities. So we do some work with Leicester City Football Club, for instance. We've taken referrals to places like the National Holocaust Museum, where they can learn and expose themselves to new ideas and new ways of thinking, explore critical thinking, all of those sorts of things to, with their consent. It's usually stuff that they enjoy. It's usually positive interactions, so they actually get quite a lot from it. And that's essentially what we try and do at the end of the day. So, yeah, persecution.
What are your comments on that, Mark?
Yeah, I think Sean's completely right in relation to the
work. I can see there's one team
right
here.
Yeah,
I can see that. I feel one team here.
Well, don't feel persecuted by us telling you about Prevent. I think the important thing to that the public know is police officers are part of Prevent. I'm a police officer. If someone's committed a crime, they're going to get investigated and they're likely to go to court and jail. But the differentiation between pursuing someone, which is part of the contest strategy, and Prevent are very separate. So Prevent is all about trying to intervene early. If someone's committed a crime, or they're likely, or they are in the process of committing terrorist acts, then it will be Pursue that will be pursuing them. I don't want to try and get too confused for the public out there. Ultimately, police have different sort of things in relation to where we address the certain topic of terrorism and counter-terrorism. So Prevent is about that early intervention. But I don't want people to think that we don't investigate crime, because if we've got people out there that are likely or on the supporting terrorism, that's an offence, and they will be investigated. What we are doing in Prevent is to try and get individuals that are at the early stages and are showing signs of going down an extreme path. And like Sean has said, if we can intervene early enough and they haven't committed a crime, then we can try and bring them back to prevent that. It's normal sort of bread and butter policing, where we try and get people to understand the laws of the land to make sure they don't break those laws and they become a part of community rather than being on the extreme side of criminality. That's really where we sit in Prevent, and it's about identifying risk, looking at vulnerabilities, and then giving a wraparound approach by utilising all different agencies like social services, education, the NHS.
Of course, we will be having an ad break shortly, and we will then go on with this program. So my producer will let us know.
Sure.
He's supposed to be putting the ad break on at 9:30, and I think he fell asleep, Mark.
Really?
Can you prevent him from doing that?
Yeah, I'll do an assessment.
That was a very radical act from him, because he's programmed me to switch off at 9:30, and he did not switch off the clock.
I think it's because he was listening to me, because I've got such an important speaker that it's very important to listen to what I've got to say, which is really nice. I take that as a compliment.
MashaAllah, that's very good. Now let's touch upon what Sean said just now. He said that teachers, healthcare workers.
Yeah.
Now in schools they have a lot on their plate.
Yes.
Yes. Now, somebody very, very clever, more than me and you, up the chain of the ladder, has decided to give teachers this massive responsibility to go find out this 4-year-old who had a little burn on the cooker at home, and in come roller coasting. The Prevent team reported for he has been abused or something has happened, and the whole team has come in there, right? And you can see now what I was getting at earlier to Sean, that we have issues here of creating a problem.
Sure.
When that teacher is not skilled or qualified in this. Sean, respectively, has had a lot of training.
Yes.
His predecessor, Will, he's had a lot of training.
Yes.
And now teachers and healthcare workers, who's trained them in this field? A headmaster giving them a 1-hour lecture is not enough. The broad stream of identifying issues cannot be, maybe I'm wrong, Sean, but how can a teacher be given that huge responsibility?
Well, first of all, it's an organisational responsibility on the schools themselves. It's not on individual teachers. And it shouldn't be too burdensome. It shouldn't impact too greatly upon their day-to-day roles, because at the end of the day, teachers are professionals and they have safeguarding at the heart of everything that they do anyway. And all I would say to teachers who are uncertain about anything in respect of Prevent is, if they've got a safeguarding concern about anybody,
we are going to have a break shortly, and we'll be back. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Brothers and sisters, we are back here on the ZED Breakfast Show on Ramadan Special EVA 102.5 FM. So we were talking about passing the onus on to everybody in the community, different people, and what skill sets do we have to give them to train them to look for issues. Now, when we have got a 4-year-old child at nursery, we have primary, secondary, university. In each stage of your life, you're in a time zone, aren't you? So a teacher teaching a nursery school, she has to be taught different things to find a problem. Now, when we start looking at 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and to start looking for problems, then if I had a child, or Mark, you had a child at school,
Yeah.
and how do we deal with that? I mean, that's going really, it's a huge burden on the parent and the teacher.
I think the important thing is that the teacher's role is still to teach. That's not changed.
Of course,
Okay, but a teacher's responsibility is also to safeguard the young people that they're teaching. And we're not saying they need to go and probe or interview or interrogate those young people. It's when things are highlighted to them or they have concerns about an individual. And those concerns is no different than a teacher saying that young lad or young lady is smoking cannabis, or that person doesn't come to school that often, or they're coming, they've got bruises on their arms, or they're concerned about that individual because they're showing beheading videos around the school. All those things are worrying incidents, and we'd expect those teachers to react to those incidents and either report it to social services or report it to their local neighbourhood officer or report things to prevent, which is part of that process. And then it's for us and those professionals to then do a bit more research on those individuals or those circumstances to decide what to do next. And whether that's a supportive mechanism or because someone may have committed crime, we might have to do an investigation. And that's part of that process. So we're not asking teachers are not out there interrogating their students. They should be teaching them, but they need to be aware, like they have been for many, many years, in relation to safeguarding individuals when certain things are being brought to their attention. And what we're doing in the prevent side of things is just identifying some other key areas that are of a concern, a risk factor.
so let's have a look at a school, for example, be it a nursery, primary, secondary, or even a hospital, right?
Yeah.
Are there any stats available to say that, well, how many cases were reported which were of Muslim or of Christian or Buddhist or Hindu? Are there any stats available like that so we can get to some kind of a consensus on this?
Yeah, those stats are available on the gov.uk website, like I mentioned, and they'll tell you that currently, the biggest source of referrals to prevent at the moment nationally come from education. Education accounts for about a third of all prevent referrals at the moment. But you touched on a really interesting point earlier on when you talked about, 4-year-old children in a nursery and nursery teachers needing to know about prevent and all of those sorts of things. I think it's really important to stress the point that we don't for 1 minute believe that a 4-year-old is a potential extremist. That is absolute rubbish. When you hear about stories about children being referred to prevent because they've mispronounced cucumber and said cooker bomb instead, that story isn't true. That young lad had never been referred to prevent. And there's a number of cases that are similar to that actually didn't make it to the stage of being a prevent referral. I think the message we would like to get out is that no child is an extremist, but a child can be at risk of significant harm because of extremism. I'm thinking of cases where children as young as 2 have been taken to Syria, for example. I mean, this sounds like a horrible thing to talk about so early in the morning, but there was a 4-year-old child from London who featured in an ISIS video not that long ago, a couple of years ago, where I don't even really want to say it, where he pressed the button on a detonator that blew up 3 hostages in a car. Now that wee boy is not a terrorist. He's very much a victim. Our role is to stop children from being put in those positions by adults who should know a good deal better. And so that's why nursery teachers shouldn't be looking for the sneaky beaky warning signs of extremism, but they should be protecting their children the same way they protect them from sexual abuse and domestic abuse and all sorts of other social harms. That's the nuts and bolts of it, really.
So where we are on this, Mark, is that this is one more addition for a nursery teacher or a primary teacher, a secondary teacher or a university teacher to be mindful of, just like when we do a DBS check or safeguarding issues. Like in the past, we've always had that where teachers are mindful. If a child comes into school with a bruise, the teacher will say, well, what happened to you? And if he's 4-year-old, he retracts and goes into a corner, and then the teacher knows, well, a 4-year-old child cannot express to say, my dad or my mother hit me. Then the school will investigate, which is traditionally, it's always been like that.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And so on. So that is different to now to look for a sign, a clue of, like you mentioned, the story of the cucumber.
Sure.
And there are many, many stories that surface in the press.
Yeah, that's in the press, though.
Yeah, in the press, there are stories every day. Now, we are led here with the social media today and what we read in the press. And sometimes here today, we're not only saying now, this is the way and this is the only way. We're here to open, to discuss, to dialogue, to debate,
Yeah.
not to argue, right? I must make that point clear,
Yeah.
right? I'm not one of those who goes down the negative road. I want to go down the positive road.
Yeah.
PMA, positive mental attitude. Are you with me?
I'm with you.
Are you against me?
Yeah.
Mark is with me.
I'm with you.
What about you, Sean?
Oh, I'm with everybody. Yeah, I'm with you for sure.
That's good. So this is, we're going to go through a few messages, Mark.
Sure,
and,
that's good.
Because you are nearest, Mark,
Yeah.
I'll do you the honor of reading them.
Okay. Right. What is the minimum age of radicalisation? That's a good question. There isn't any.
I mean, we've
There
kind
is
of all...
no minimum age in relation to someone being radicalised. I mean, that's the worrying bit about the work that we do, is it can vary so widely in relation to when someone can get turned into seeing some horrible things or listening to a certain sort of ideology. So there is no minimum age. And that's why everything you need to keep an open mind, don't you?
Of course.
And that's the biggest thing, is people just being open-minded and thinking about what could come to them and what they could end up being sort of opened up to, or what they're vulnerable to. And that's the biggest thing, is identifying those vulnerabilities. And that's the biggest thing, is we need people to refer people into us, so we can then look to see where that person sits in relation to their vulnerability and what risks they have to themselves and others. So a lot of our work in Prevent is all about risk assessment and identifying vulnerabilities. And I can't stress it enough, if we can get to an individual earlier, then we're hopefully going to have a positive outcome for them and all of us. That's the ultimate goal, is to have a positive outcome for them and us and the community at large. And that's what we've got to try and address. Is there another question that's on there? Or would you like to ask me something else?
There are many questions outside of what you see on the screen that we've sort of collated here and made a note of, but you can carry on.
I know there was another one at the top. I think Michael put it up there, and that is about the searching. If you just put in prevent statistics on the gov.uk website, it comes up with the book and then a load of stats within that booklet. So if anyone wants to read those statistics, it's on the gov.uk website, and you can just search in on any search engine, prevent statistics, and it will be probably the first or second thing that comes back on the search.
I am looking at your eyes, and that looks like a Saturday afternoon read.
Oh yeah, definitely.
100 pages.
No, listen,
I've not read it.
It's 5 or 6 pages.
5-6 pages.
5 or 6 pages. There's lots of wee flow charts and diagrams in there as well. So it's not an onerous read.
Let's take that message from Zara. Just to remind Zara, we are having a discussion here, not an argument, and we need to cover everybody's views. Right?
I don't know if it's a bit more.
Yeah,
more
there
down
you
there.
are.
Yeah. It seems as though. Do you want me to read this out?
Of course.
Of course.
Everything is in the
I find
open
this
here.
show very uncomfortable. It seems as though the presenters are being unnecessarily difficult and disagreeing for the sake of it. I work in a nursery. We also have to follow the prevent duty. I defo don't find it a burden or hard. It's just looking out for extremists' behaviour. It can't create a problem that's not already there. Little Johnny with a burn on his hand wouldn't be classed as radical, but if it was repeated incidents and the child used any radical language or behaviour, it would be reported. Okay, that's a good positive comment in relation to the work that
just to talk
we
to
all
Zara,
do. Yeah.
that we are having just a discussion here, aren't we?
Yeah, we are having a discussion.
We're not angry at each other.
No, I've got no anger. I don't sense any anger from you.
We are very peaceful here, Zara. It's nothing like that we want anybody to feel uncomfortable. So,
but that's a very supportive message, what she says there, in relation to the work that we're trying to do.
You know, everybody here is working together.
Yes.
As a team, and we have to share each other's grievances.
Yes.
So just as a parent who would be absolutely angry to hear that his child has been pulled up for this or that, and we have to respect the parents' views as well.
Yes.
And then this is what happens is when you make a false assessment on a child, and again, it brings it back to the issue of Muslim child, and then that creates more problems because you've now got the parent, the wife, and all the relatives, the extended family, they all get involved.
Yes.
To have an opinion, which then steers us in a negative road.
At the end of the day, we all want what's best for children, don't we? Nobody wants children to come to any harm. There may be disagreements about how best we go about that, but I think we've all got the same goal in mind. We're all pulling in the same direction, so that's a start, if nothing else.
So you see the next message here, Mark.
Why is it necessary in nursery? Why is it necessary in nursery when standard safeguarding procedures are already in place?
Well, prevent should be part of everyday safeguarding procedures anyway, so there's no need for a nursery to have a standalone prevent policy. But every nursery, I'm telling you, will have a safeguarding policy.
Of course, now
and
all
prevent
these
should be incorporated in that, so it's not a separate issue by any stretch.
Of course, when the cases that come to attention, and if they get them wrong, then that causes more damage than it does good.
Yeah,
well,
but they're very few. They are very few. I've been a police officer for 22 years, and mistakes will happen. They do. That's part of a process of doing work. There's something you're going to do that's not going to go quite right.
If a mistake happens, is a parent... you've heard of cases where a parent will say that I'm going to sue this teacher, I'm going to sue the hospital, I'm going to sue the headmaster. Does that happen?
I don't know. I'm not aware of that locally happening. I think a lot of the stories are not even happening in Leicester or Leicestershire.
Yeah.
A lot of the horror stories that people talk about haven't happened here locally, and if they have happened, they are very minimal sort of cases that just get exaggerated and pulled to extremes. And the people will pick on these things.
Would be interesting to
try and
find
make
that out,
our work even harder.
It would be interesting to have any feedback on that from anyone. If anyone's listening out there, if you know of any cases, it'd be interesting to know that.
Let's put this in a wee bit of context then, because again, these statistics are widely available on the government website. If you were to look at child safeguarding referrals nationally, in an average year, there would be over 650,000 children referred for safeguarding issues
Per annum.
per year, which is a terrible figure. It's a huge figure. But in over 50% of cases, there is found to be no cause for concern and no further action. So in terms of prevent accounts for less than 1% of that overall figure. So of the 650,000 children who get referred for safeguarding, less than 1% of those relate to prevent. And in terms of those who are where there's no further action required, it certainly isn't as high as 50%. So when you compare prevent to other forms of safeguarding that are completely uncontroversial, that everybody agrees with, social services, dealing with domestic abuse and sexual violence and alcoholism in the family and all of those sorts of things, prevent matches up well in respect of numbers of referrals and the numbers of referrals that require no further action. Bottom line is there's too many kids in this country who are at risk of serious harm, not just from extremism, but from a wealth of issues. And sometimes I wish that those other issues got just as much attention in the media for a start and from all of our communities as Prevent does. Prevent seems to take up a massive amount of the conversation, and I get that. It's a controversial issue, it's complex, it's emotive, it's all of these things. But there are a whole host of harms being done to our kids on a daily basis that we need to be giving equal attention to, I feel.
So you mentioned 1% out of 650, that's countrywide.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the city of Leicester, how many children off the top of your head would you recall have been reported for extremism or radicalism?
Well, in terms of, I sit on the monthly channel panel, which deals with the most high-risk individuals, the people who are actually receiving one-to-one care and support. And to be perfectly honest with you, I would say the majority of channel cases would be in their late teens, early 20s, perhaps.
So about 20 cases.
Very, very few children actually get taken into channel. I'm talking about children as young as the likes of 10, for example, you know. People in their teens would probably comprise the most in terms of people receiving support from channel. I'm not going to go into the specific figures in terms of how many we're dealing with at any one time, but it's fair to say as well, because I noticed another question that popped up on your Facebook page there earlier on was what percentage of Muslims get referred to Prevent? And currently, in Leicester, I don't think it's inappropriate for me to say that we actually have more far-right channel cases at the moment than we do Islamist-inspired cases.
On the next part of our program, we were going to discuss the far-right issues as well, because we need a balance here on the Muslims. So out of the 20 cases, next question was going to be how many of them were from the Muslim community.
50-50 at the moment.
Yeah, so 50% would be from the Muslim community and 50% from the far right. Yeah,
with a smattering of others in there as well. So, for instance, I recall over the past 12 months, we've dealt with cases involving Irish-related extremism. You know, people who are inspired by an Irish Republican ideology. And we've had cases where there's no identifiable political ideology. You know, no one aspires to be a jihadist, no one aspires to be a white supremacist, but they do have an aspiration to commit extreme violence. And we deal with those individuals as well when an ideology isn't clear, but the violence element is present.
Of course, Mark, if you could read that message from Tracy.
Yeah, sure. I love this radio station because it has mixed culture, love the chat, learn from each other. Very positive.
Of course, we have the initiative this month here on the radio, which is called MAD.
Right.
Yes, could you define that in a not so extreme manner, or
what you'd have to tell me what it is
not
first.
in a radical
what is
way?
it, MAD? What is your
The MAD initiative? All my brothers and sisters out there in the human race listening, is make a difference.
Make a difference.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
We're all here on this planet to come to make a difference, and my producer there is giving us, the sign language over there.
Yes.
What does that mean, Mark?
I think there's an advert coming up.
Yes.
Is that about right?
Mark has been totally radicalized here with the radio.
And we can't make a difference without those adverts.
Of course we can't. So Tracy, thank you for that. We continue to do that and do it better and better every day. So we shall be back on the next part of the program where we're going to discuss about some more stats and the far right as to the impact that they are having here in the community. And I can share a little story myself personally.
Sure.
And we can have a laugh.
Okay.
So thank you very much. We'll be back shortly. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brothers and sisters, this is your host Zed on the Breakfast Show on Ramadan Special EAVA 102.5 FM. You are here on the last part of our program this morning. If you would like to connect with us on 0116212932 or you can text us on 07450925084. Now, we had a text earlier on. I don't know which country it was from, but it wasn't in English. And it looked like it was in Turkish language. So my producer is going to work very hard to put that into Google and get it translated so we can prevent a problem happening.
It wasn't Irish by any chance, was it?
No, it wasn't Irish.
I might be able to
So
help.
Khalid Patel has joined us and he can send us a message or two. Do that, Khalid. Don't be shy. I know you're not very shy, man. You're one of those outspoken characters in the city of Leicester. So, City of Champions, we are back here now. We're going to talk about the issues also from the far right and the issues from the media. You're listening to us on Ramadan Special on EAVA 102.5 FM. So my producer has programmed for me to say that every 12 minutes. And
He's a very good producer, isn't he?
yeah, he's on the ball. Yeah. So now we was talking about the issues, how the media creates an issue when they put headlines in which sell newspapers. Of course, readerships where people physically buy a newspaper, pay money for it when they can get it all on the social media. More and more young people are referring to the social media. And when they read these headlines, always they're targeting Islamophobic issues. So people out there on the street, Sean, do they know the difference between Islamist ideology, Islamic ideology, or Islamophobia? Do they know that difference?
No.
No.
Of course not. And although I firmly believe in a free press, and I love social media myself, if I could change one thing, goodness knows I would try to make our media be a wee bit more responsible about how they report things. Because it's very easy to be taken in by pretty much anything these days. Best piece of advice I ever had in respect of that sort of thing came from my daughter when she was 5 years old. And she said to me one day when I was on my phone and I was checking the news, and she said, "Oh, make sure you check it from 3 different places before you decide what to believe."
I think we need your daughter on this
I
program.
know. And I thought to myself, how does my
That's good
5-year-old
advice.
how does my 5-year-old know more about online safety than I do? But they've got e-cadets at her school. They had a presentation from year 6s who designed posters for internet safety and stuff like that. But the point I'm trying to make is that we could all learn from just reading a bit more widely and thinking about things a wee bit more deeply. So, for instance, who ever thinks to check back on a news story they read 2 days ago to find out whether the version they read then is still the same, whether it hasn't evolved or changed or anything since then, or what one newspaper tells you will be completely different from what another one tells you, So I just like a wee bit more responsibility, particularly as far as Islamophobia, etc. is concerned, because it's really unfair, I think. And I don't mean to patronise anybody by any stretch, but I think Muslims get a raw deal in this country sometimes, in terms of how they're perceived by the media. And I always think about every time there's a terrorist attack, Islamist-inspired, Manchester Arena attack, for instance, why is it, and why should it be, that it's our Muslim communities who suffer twice? Do you know what I mean? In terms of they suffer and they grieve with everybody else. Do you know what I mean? Over 3 million Muslims in the UK who contribute positive to society. Yet at the same time, they have to put up with this rise in hate crime and Islamophobia, where idiots blame them for the actions of a tiny minority who think they're defending Britain when in actual fact they're playing into extremists' hands by creating this them against us divided society. And the media needs to get a grip of itself, to be perfectly honest, and be a wee bit more responsible in how they report things like that. You look at, I'm going to go off on one, I'm afraid, but if you look at newspaper headlines after the Westminster Bridge attack, and before anybody even knew what Khalid Masood's motivations were, newspapers were calling it out as a terrorist incident with shocking images of the injured terrorist and police officers with their guns drawn, made the front pages of every newspaper. Fast forward a couple of months later, you've got the Finsbury Park Mosque attack, Darren Osborne, where he hires a vehicle, he's a lone attacker, he plows into innocent civilians outside a symbolic location in our capital city. What's so different between that and the Westminster Bridge attack? The methodology is completely the same. To be blunt, the only thing different is the colour of his skin. And whilst it was declared a terrorist incident by the police within minutes, and a lot of newspapers did report it responsibly, there were some newspapers, their headlines were absolutely ridiculous. There's one newspaper put a long headline along the lines of, "Jobless lone wolf commits attack on mosque. Family say this father of four had suffered mental health problems." So you've got mention of family and mental health and the fact that he didn't have a job and all of these sorts of things, and not one mention of the word terrorism. So there needs to be a bit more responsibility in terms of how this issue is dealt with.
If these people who are putting out these stories, Mark, and for every one story they put out, 26 or 28 or a huge number of girls who are wearing hijab get attacked,
Yeah.
stigmatized, pounced upon. We had a case in Leicester not so long ago where the driver, he mowed a girl walking on the road, a Muslim girl.
Yeah.
Her name starts from Z,
Yes.
because I'm also Z, so I remember that very well. And that was a horrendous issue. Then we had the New Zealand issue there, right, where one guy, he massacres so many people, and it's mind-boggling, isn't it? You're sitting here in England, and New Zealand's very far away from here,
Yeah.
but you hear the cries, you feel the emotional pain from what you see there.
That's one of the big things about terrorism and global events, because although they may happen on another side of the world, they can still have massive local consequences. I went to the vigil down the road at Masjid Umar after the Christchurch attack, and you could feel the pain, and it felt like the attack happened here. Do you know what I mean? Because these things trickle down and have those significant local consequences. There may be family connections, friendships, etc. The first Prevent case I ever dealt with was a young lad who was so inspired by the Norway massacre, Anders Breivik, back in 2011. Over 70 people killed in Oslo and Utøya Island by this right-wing terrorist. And we've had Prevent referrals who have been inspired by that, who have wanted to replicate that, which is another example of how global events can influence local ones. So yeah, that's why it's important to get a grip of these issues and build resilience at a local level.
Yeah, of course, balance to show the public out there that these issues of attack are not only Muslim eccentric, they are also from the far right.
Definitely.
You know, when yesterday only I was with one of my friends, Andy, and he said to me, my granddad was National Front, my dad was BNP, and I am EDL. I says, good on you, Andy. You know, I says, you're doing well, aren't you? And you see how the transition has been?
Yeah.
In each
Yeah.
era, in each time zone, you've got different lads. And Andy was saying, oh, I'm only kidding. But you see, this is how it
Thankfully,
starts.
because I was thinking we were going to have to pay Andy a visit there for a minute, to be honest with you.
And he said, you know me, Zed, I'm only interested in the colour of money. Yeah?
Yeah.
And Andy, if you're listening there, we'll carry on this banter afterwards.
Oh, bless him.
So, of course, there is issues, you know, what we call people on the street, they'll laugh at it and they will deal with it. But these are issues I've also come across all of the time, is the newspaper headlines, they stigmatize the Muslim community more and more, right? And we're all here to work together.
Definitely, that's what
as
it's
one
about.
team,
Yeah.
and learn more about each other. When you see the Muslims during the month of Ramadan, they excel in the charity work that they do.
Yeah.
When the Grenfell disaster happened,
Yeah.
the Muslims were there from all over the country. They were not looking at going and helping Muslim people there. They will be anywhere where there is a humanitarian need. When there was a flood in Carlisle, and the people who were not Muslims, they would come out and says, it was those Muslims who came and helped us out.
Yes.
So there are so many positive things that they do, Mark.
Yes, there are.
If I started on this radio program to list them and take the good with the bad,
Yeah.
the balance will be huge.
Yeah, it is. It's massive.
And this is what all of you, my fellow colleagues in the media, have got to pick up on and to tell the world, bring awareness to all the good that human beings are doing in this world,
Yeah.
instead of all the time bashing out a headline which causes more people to be attacked out there.
Yeah.
And Sean quite rightly said that I we agreed with Mark. Are we in agreement with Sean?
I'm in agreement with Sean, yeah, definitely. In relation to the media, has a big responsibility to play in when they do their journalism.
I think we should put Sean up as our local politician here in
Local
Leicester
politician, yeah.
and elevate his status.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
What do you think, the listeners out there? Some of you listeners out there are a little bit shy. Do call us on 0116 212 9324 or text us on 07450 925 084. There are many issues here in the community that we all have to get together and deal with them as a collective body of human beings. Even some of you who are not in agreement to everything that goes on, and those who are in agreement, without us sitting on a table and having a samosa, that's after Ramadan,
Sure.
and a cup of tea,
Yes.
a chai, then we're not going to fix this problem, are we, Sean?
Well, again, one of the things that I would always say is it's fine to disagree and it's fine to have your views, but, you know, it's no good shouting from the sidelines and criticizing all the time. My challenge to people would be get involved, come and speak to us, question us, see what we're all about. And then you may actually be able to make a difference. You know, it's very interesting to note that in August of this year, there's going to be an independent review of Prevent in the UK. And that would be a good opportunity for anybody who's got issues with what we do to make those feelings known to whoever the independent reviewer is going to be and actually engage with the process. So that would be my plea, rather than just, you know, gurn and shout from the sidelines. Actually get involved in a constructive way to make your feelings thought, and who knows, maybe you can make a difference.
So another text somebody sent me is, for many agree that Prevent is a spying tool for the government, right? What are your comments on that?
We're not allowed to do anything that's covert, bottom line. That's in black and white in the Prevent duty. There are elements of the UK's counter-terrorism programme where surveillance is an investigative tool. I'm thinking of Pursue, which deals with investigating terrorist attacks and potential terrorists. But Prevent, what we do, we're not allowed. Everything we do has to be open and transparent. I'm sure you'd agree, Mark, wouldn't you?
Ultimately, it's all up front. I'm a police officer and I work in the Prevent team. So obviously, that's my job. I'm a police officer. I'm not spying on them. When I ask people questions, they're going to give me information or they're not. Obviously, we use that information to risk assess and assess people's vulnerability, and then it possibly may link in with other investigations. I want to be as crystal clear about that, but I'm not a spy, because I will have my warrant card, I identify who I am. So if I'm a spy, I'm not a very good one, am I? Because I say, my name's Mark Bailey, I'm a police constable, I work at Spinhill Park Police Station, I'm a Prevent officer. And my role is. So I'm not a spy. I've not got a pseudonym, I am who I am. So I'm not spying. But my role is to identify risk, identify vulnerabilities, and then to sort out an action plan about trying to mitigate that risk and try and reduce those vulnerabilities. But obviously, if I find out other information that links us into terrorist crime, then I'm going to obviously feed that into the machinery, into the system, to make sure my colleagues in Pursue can look at those individuals. Do you know what I mean? So I don't want people to... but I'm not a spy. They will know that I will also be thinking of an investigation to try and stop terrorism. But my main role is to try and identify risk, reduce that risk, look at people's vulnerabilities. But I am a police officer, and I don't hide. I don't do sneaky beaky stuff. I tell people who I am and what I'm there for.
So, Mark and Sean, in the early days, when we all agreed that these words were alien to us, extremism and radicalism, and there's a message up there earlier on, which said that in the early days, we said foreign policy had no part to play in radicalization. Is that still being held today by Prevent?
I would say that foreign policy can be a factor in someone's radicalisation. I mean, every case I've dealt with is different. and every individual has their own personal issues, grievances, vulnerabilities, wherever it may be. And if someone is radicalized by their perceptions of US and UK foreign policy, then who am I to say that that's not the case? Do you know what I mean? It's absolutely fine to have strong views about what we do abroad. I have fairly strong views on them myself, to be perfectly honest with you. So, of course, that can be a contributing factor, but it's not the only factor. There's normally a host of other ones as well, but I certainly wouldn't say, that's rubbish. No, of course it can be.
So, foreign policy, for those of you who will not understand, is like, for example, if there is a war-torn country somewhere in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, Yemen, and somebody from out there is going to start now grooming on the internet from anywhere in the world. He could be doing that task,
Yeah.
and he could pick up one vulnerable individual, and the community has vulnerability everywhere,
Yeah.
and then that person goes and does something wrong, then it was a direct result of foreign policy or an incident in another part of the world.
You're right.
Right? Now, with that happening, then all of us here in England, in Europe, are going to feel the pain of that one individual's actions.
In relation to which part we're talking about, the foreign policy or the terrorist act? Which act are we talking about?
Even if we don't use the word foreign policy, but an incident happening in another part of the world, in Syria, Yemen, all the war-torn countries,
Yeah.
what happens there, then the grooming process will start, and the direct result of that will be somebody from England going out there to do something, as you said, push the button. It affects everybody.
Yeah.
Potentially, but then also when you think about it, over 1 million people, I believe, marched against the war in Iraq, but we don't have 1 million radicalized people in the UK. So I think where we need to be concerned is where someone gets to the point where they believe so strongly about something, where they're willing to commit violence in pursuance of whatever their goal or ideology, political aim or whatever is. So if somebody does have an issue with UK foreign policy, if somebody does feel pain when they see the suffering of children worldwide, then let's try and find constructive ways in which they can actively do something about that, rather than resorting to violence, which I wouldn't condone under any circumstances.
So another message I had was that when you are down the road of stigmatizing, and if somebody is saying that you are stigmatizing, Prevent is stigmatizing, and that causes further alienation in the community. And instead of preventing, you end up creating problems. So do you think it's a good idea if there's a balance clearly shown that this month so many people from far right have been spoken to and so many people from the Muslim community have been spoken to show that balance, that it's not a case of stigmatizing? Earlier on you mentioned that nowadays we are dealing more with far right extremism than we are on the other side, to show that balance, to bring awareness.
I think it's important that we have to work on the threats that are with us in the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
So our resources are targeted on specific threats. So I don't think it's helpful in relation to sort of saying that there's a balance, because we'll have, wherever our risk is highest, we focus those resources on that risk.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing. And the terrible thing for me working in this community is that Islam has been hijacked by these terrorist groups. And that's the thing that we've got to focus on. And when we focus on the white supremacists, we have to work on their ideology. But I don't think it's helpful to sort of say there's a balance or it's equal, because it probably isn't equal. You're going to have different parts of the community in the United Kingdom where you're going to have probably no footprint in relation to the ideology of Daesh or Al-Qaeda, but you might have more in relation to the white supremacy, because the country demographics is so different, isn't it, throughout the whole of the United Kingdom. So, but the important thing for me as a practitioner is that we don't stigmatise the community. We want the community to help us sort out that problem. That's the important message.
Moving forward, because we have 4 minutes left and 26 seconds, 25 now. We have non-Muslim organizations also in UK, NUT, NUS, UN, Rights Watch, UK Peace, Justice Initiative, David Anderson, Vice Chancellor of Oxford University, Louis Richardson, and they have all also questioned the Prevent.
Yes, and that's good.
In the UK.
Yeah.
So this stat you've had before, haven't you? You've heard this one before, that they have also questioned, and one of the big scholars out there, Professor Noam Chomsky, he's also had issues.
Yeah, sure.
That if we are continuing to go down the route of stigmatizing, we don't actually fix a problem, we create the problem. So
Yeah, although we do need to look carefully at some of those lists, and I'll only be brief here, but you talked about the National Union of Teachers, for example. Well, the same week that they passed a motion to temporarily remove Prevent from schools, the Association of Teachers and Lecturers actually voted in the opposite direction, and they voted to retain Prevent in schools, but that didn't make the media. In fact, I searched high and low and I could only find one small report in respect of that. People like David Anderson, for instance, the former independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, I think you'll find that he's not actually anti-Prevent. He went into exploring Prevent with a very open mind, and he spoke to people from all different communities and backgrounds and experiences, and came to his own conclusions about how, broadly speaking, it was a good thing but can be improved upon. So there's nuance in a lot of those, but I get the overall point that you're trying to make in respect of, the trust issues that we need to build up with people.
I'm a unbiased person here. I don't make points. I really reporting the points that
you're bringing the points that other people have
people have brought on the table, right?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
They will continue to bring these points on every day, and then that's why all the more reason why we have to all work together as a team.
Yeah.
And feed each other this information, because if every point is put on the table and Mark, you have got a statement ready to defend it, then we're not fixing the problem. We're just prolonging the debate. We need to put on the table solutions.
Yeah.
Long-term solutions, right? We want your 5-year-old child to be stronger than even she is now at 5. I think she'll be ready to go to university when she's 10 to become the social engineer of this country, to show us how
Quite possibly.
how we should be living in these difficult times.
Yeah, and I think you're right, Zed. And I think the important thing to sort of say is Prevent evolves like any other legislation that we deal with in the police or government. And that's important, that people get involved with the consultation process, and they do debate about what we do in our society, whether it's the police, social services, the NHS, education. It's good to have that debate and to also check. And that's why it's good that we have got this independent review coming up on Prevent, because it gives that opportunity. But and Prevent will evolve. I don't think we're going to lose it. I don't think it's going to be turned on its head or ripped up. I think because it does, it is a good work. It's good work. It's good work, and it does save people.
So to move forward, to find a positive resolve here now, let's all of us in the community, all organizations, bring on your comments. Let's set up a seminar where we can work together with everybody who's a stakeholder in the community to move forward in a positive manner, and not individually working on this and giving our own opinions and don't come to nothing. So we all work together, guys. All of you out there listening in, let's work together and go forward in a positive manner. In the 70s, when the National Front were out there saying, don't come to England, the Ugandan Asians, Leicester does not want you, certainly, go somewhere else. And we all came to Leicester.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And here we are. I'm one of them. So guys, we'll talk to you again on this topic. This is not the end of the story. It's a beginning of the story.
Yeah.
So we'll touch base with you all. Thank you, Sean, and thank you, Mark.
No problem. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Jazakallah khair. See you tomorrow. There you are.